Hi, it's Laura, Aquamarine18. Welcome. This is going to be a video in my playlist for Depth Year 2020. Part of my plan for the upcoming year related to books is to read all of the paperback or hardcover books that I have in my house that I bought with the intention of reading cover to cover that I have not yet read. So I'm calling this my to-read list for 2020 / the book stack of shame. The books that have been sitting around that for whatever reason, not due to lack of interest, that I just haven't gotten to. So I know I'll be getting a couple of books for Christmas. I think I usually do from my mom. I'm not counting those in the book pile of shame because I'm just getting them now, so I feel okay about that. I'm also not counting, I have a lot of reference books and things like that for work that I haven't read cover to cover but never had the intention of doing so that I'm leaving out. And what I've come up with is actually 10 books. I went through, I have 4 or 5 different bookshelves in my house, and I went through and I found the 10 books. It just happened to turn out to be 10. I went through and looked at all of my books to see what I hadn't read yet. So this is my reading list for 2020, and I will say, I feel like this list would be a whole lot longer if we included the ebook folder of shame on the computer. I have access to a lot of ebooks, so I'm just gonna not pay attention to that for the purpose of this video. But I do want, as part of my depth year goals for 2020, that all of the books on my shelf that I bought with the intention of reading are books that I will have read by the end, and I will also be reading any novels or whatnot that I receive for Christmas as well. And I think I have only one book. No, I have 2 books. I have 2 books on Amazon pre-order as well that I've already pre-ordered, so I'm allowing myself those in 2020 as well. One is Chani Nicholas's astrology book, and the other one is the next book that will be published by N.K. Jemisin, who's one of my favorite authors. So those are the only books that I know that I would be getting in 2020. So this is my reading list, and I thought that I would share it. There's actually a quite significant, there's a couple of books in this pile related to cards and tarot, so maybe some folks will be interested in this video. We'll see. And I'm curious to see what anyone else who's doing a depth year, if you have a reading list, please do comment below or share it. I'd be happy to see it and chat about that. So the first book that I have on my list is actually, and when I say the first book on my list, I mean the one that's on the top of the pile, not necessarily that I'm planning to read these in any particular order, because I'm not. So the first book that I have on the top of the pile is a book that I actually read some of, but I never finished, and that book is called Love Beyond Body, Space and Time, an Indigenous LGBT sci-fi anthology, edited by Hope Nicholson. And this is a really short book, and you can see I've actually got this is one of the extra cards from the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial in a Tin that I use as a bookmark, which I now just pulled out of the book. That's great. I can figure out where I was. And this is an anthology of LGBT Indigenous sci-fi, and it's short stories. It's a fairly short book, and I have read a couple of the authors in this book before, but a lot of them I haven't. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I really like short stories, and I really like science fiction, so that's great. Next book on my list is a novel, and it's The Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, and I have no idea why I didn't get to this book in 2019. I haven't had it that long, but I'm very excited to read this book, and I'll just read a little tiny bit maybe of the back, but something that stuck out for me were some of the comparisons to other authors, which I really like. And the plot, this is also, all of the fiction on this list is sci-fi or fantasy of some description. So a little tiny bit of the description on the back of this book. Aster lives in the low-deck slums of the HSS Matilda, a space vessel organized much like the antebellum South. For generations, Matilda has ferried the last of humanity to a mythical promised land. On its way, the ship's leaders have imposed harsh moral restrictions and deep indignities on dark-skinned sharecroppers like Aster. Embroiled in a grudge with a brutal overseer, Aster learns that there may be a way to improve her lot if she is willing to sow the seeds of civil war. I think it sounds really, really good. I've read a lot of reviews of this book, which is kind of how I found out about it. There's a couple of book reviewers that I follow on Instagram, and this book came up a couple of times, and I'm looking forward to reading this book as well. High on the list of to read. Now, the last fiction, actually, only 3 fiction in the book stack of shame, is another anthology, and this one is called The Djinn Falls in Love and Other Stories, edited by Mavesh Murad and Jared Shurin. Hopefully I'm saying those names correctly. And this is a collection, again, of short stories. And it says, a fascinating collection of new and classic tales of the fearsome Djinn from best-selling, award-winning, and breakthrough international writers. It says some call them genies. These are the Djinn. So there's a lot of different kind of genres, I think, in here. And there's some authors in here that I have read before as well, which made this collection stand out to me. I don't think I've ever at any time read anything about Djinn before, so I'm looking forward to this collection also. Next, I have a couple of non-fiction books. And the first one that I have that's been on my shelf for a while that I kind of bought with the plan to read all of it, and I kind of had referenced it a couple of times in my work but never read it through. And that one's called The Man Who Never Died, The Life, Times, and Legacy of Joe Hill, American labor icon. And Joe Hill was a musician and a songwriter, and he was convicted of murder in 1914 and sentenced to the death penalty. And so this is a book that goes through his life and that trial and makes a case that he was actually not guilty, and talks about kind of that context. And in the context of my kind of academic life, I guess, this is a time period that I'm really interested in, that I've done some work on. So I think that there will be a lot, about the broader context of this story that I'm familiar with, but I haven't read this book, and I'm not that familiar with Joe Hill, so it's a bit different. Looking forward to reading that one, and it's by William M. Adler. Second, nonfiction, I have from PM Press, Outrage, an anarchist memoir of the Penal Colony by Clément Duval, translated by Michael Shreve, with an introduction by Marianne Enkel. And Clément Duval lived 1850 to 1935, and he was sent to a French Guiana prison camp after being charged with attempted murder and theft, and he was an illegalist and an anarchist. And so this is his memoir, and it says on the back of the book that he was there in the camp for 14 years. And then he ended up escaping and arriving to New York City in 1901. So I'm a little bit familiar with him in the context of his arrival in the United States, but I haven't read this book or anything written by Clément Duval. So I'm looking forward to this memoir as well, and it's a pretty short one. So that's Outrage by Clément Duval. And now we'll see a shift in genre a little bit, or a lot of bit actually. I bought, right when it came out, the translation of the Daodejing by Ursula Le Guin. I've never read the Daodejing at all. I have some familiarity with it, not a lot. I do have a lot of familiarity with Ursula Le Guin, who is one of my absolute all-time favorite fiction authors of short stories and novels in science fiction. She's amazing. She was an anarchist and a feminist, and her Taoist principles and inspirations come through in her books a lot, but I haven't actually read this text. So when I saw that they were releasing her translation, and it's posthumously, because Ursula Le Guin had passed away in 2018, when they released it, I thought, perfect, I would love to read this. I don't necessarily expect it to be, I don't know what I want to say, the most traditional kind of translation. And I haven't really read any reviews of this particular translation, which again is quite new. But I'm looking forward to reading this. Yeah. Okay, next are the card-related books, which are maybe most of interest to folks on this channel. I bought the complete Lenormand Oracle Handbook by Caitlin Matthews. I've read Caitlin Matthews before, but I've never read this one, and folks will know that one of my depth year goals is learning Lenormand. So I'm going to make a video later on about the supplies I have for that. I just have a couple of decks and this one book as one book on Lenormand that I have, plus the guidebooks with the other couple of decks that I got. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think that the book looks really great. I've liked the other Caitlin Matthews that I read, and I think that the book looks like organized really well. I think it'll be a good learning tool. I know there's a lot of resources for things like this online and YouTube, definitely. I'll be looking, and I already have some channels and playlists kind of bookmarked for when I'm learning Lenormand on YouTube, but I really like having a physical book as something to learn with as well. So I picked this one. Next, I have two tarot books. The first one, Tarot for Troubled Times by Shaheen Miro and Teresa Reed. I'm not that familiar with either author, to be completely honest, but the subtitle of the book, Confront Your Shadow, Heal Yourself, Transform the World, appealed to me. I think that we certainly do live in troubled times, and the back of the book talks about liberating us from old patterns and limiting beliefs, and I liked that idea, and it feels like maybe, with it being describing about shadow work and things like this, there'll be like a Jungian kind of angle to this, which is something I'm interested in learning more about. So I'm looking forward to this one, and this will be one I think that I will review for the channel, so keep an eye out for that one. Similarly, I also bought Querying the Tarot by Cassandra Snow. Now this one is kind of I guess I've half read it, because many folks will probably know that Cassandra Snow wrote on the Little Red Tarot blog, and wrote a Querying the Tarot series, I guess, on the blog, which comes into this book, right? So I have read Cassandra Snow on this topic in the context of the blog before, so I'm not expecting this book to be completely new to me. And the foreword is by Beth Maiden of Little Red Tarot as well. It has photos in the book that are from the Urban Tarot, and queer and tarot is right up my alley, obviously. So I'm looking forward to reading this one, and also to sharing my thoughts about this book on the channel as well. The last book I got was a bit, not a bit, was maybe completely inspired by my friend Kara over at her channel QWitch772, and also on the Pagan Perspectives Collaborative channel. I saw a review of this book there, and that's The Elements of Magic, Reclaiming Earth, Air, Fire, Water, Spirit, edited by Jane Meredith and Jeed Parma. I hope I'm saying that right. with a foreword by Starhawk, and I actually just read my first Starhawk book, The Fifth Sacred Thing, which is a novel, this year. So this one is a anthology again, and just briefly the back says, with brilliant contributions from members of the international reclaiming community, this empowering book provides spells, exercises, practices, and perspectives that are taught in reclaiming's foundational class, Elements of Magic. Discover techniques for grounding, casting a circle, trance, and visualization, as well as guidance for working with breath, raising energy, and charging an intention. If you long to experience the ecstatic practice of magic, Elements of Magic is for you. And I don't, identify as part of the reclaiming tradition or anything like that. I'm very much just kind of learning about that. But elemental energies and associations are a big part of my spiritual practice and the way that I think about the world and the way that I read cards and all of those things. So this one really appealed to me. I feel like inevitably, with it being an anthology, like some of it will probably resonate with me a lot more than other. But I think that it will be a really interesting read, and I am looking forward to it. So that's the 10th book. So that is my 10 book pile of shame, books that have been sitting on my shelf, all of them for a month plus, that I have not yet read, except for a little bit of the first anthology, which I did read. So I think I have a pretty good, well-rounded, interesting reading list here with a couple of the different genres represented. And so I am looking forward to a lot of reading this year. I feel like, particularly since getting out of school a couple of years ago in 2016, I really struggled to get back into reading for myself because, when you're in school and you're reading several books a week for classes and for research and this and that, it's hard to then, want to also read in your spare time when so much of your time is already spent on reading. Not that I wasn't enjoying what I was reading, but, it was hard to then want to pick up a novel at night or something like that. And I feel like I'm just getting to that point now where I'm really enjoying reading again and reading a lot for myself as much as time allows, particularly getting back to reading fiction again, which I love. But I feel like there's a lot in my little pile here for me to enjoy. If you have anything that you're, again, looking forward to reading in 2020, or if you want to, make a VR about your book pile of shame, do feel free. I love to know what other folks are reading, whether or not, I know that the channel is kind of tarot and oracle related, but whether or not it's about that, I love knowing what people are reading just kind of in general, and what kind of books that people enjoy. I think it's a great, topic of conversation. Yeah. So thanks for watching, and I hope that everybody has a great day. Bye.